If you hear my stomach rumbling, I do apologise, I haven't had my pot noodle yet, but if you haven't guessed so already by the title, over a long period of time I've been working my way through 14 Yorkshire novels, and here's my review of the first 7 of them. If you haven't done so already, be sure to watch my Top Yorkshire Films video. Now, I won't be ranking these books, I'll just be reviewing them individually. And my main thinking behind this video was, there's all these classic books you hear about, but are they actually good? Are they worth reading? And sometimes you get bored and you just want to read something new, in which case, I hope at least something in this video interests you. But the thing I want to make clear is that life is too short to read bad books. My time and your time is far too precious to waste slogging through some boring book. So I've done that for you here. What I mean by that is, I want to spend my life reading the best books, books which have changed the way we think, have moved us emotionally. That's the experience I'm looking for with a book, okay? And so when I'm reviewing them, if I may seem a little bit harsh, it's because I demand excellence, okay? Excellence. With that in mind, there's just a little bit more preamble to get through. Now, first of all, there's no Brontes in this one, as you can tell from the title. They get far too much attention, they can sit this one out. And also, there's no Dracula. I'm very sorry, Dracula's a great novel, however, it's not a Yorkshire novel. Yes, it has one part of it set in Whitby, and God knows we milk that for all it's worth, but it's also set in London, Transylvania, and on a boat in the middle of the sea. So, by that logic, Atonement is a French novel because it has part of it set in Dunkirk. So, it's not really a Yorkshire novel, okay? Anyway, in selecting these books, I've gone for a mix of old and new, classics and hidden gems to give you a really nice range and mixture. So, anyway, on with the video. Oh, I can guarantee I'm going to be getting all these comments like, oh, you should read this, when it has all the literary merit of a Twilight fanfiction. In no particular order, we have first up God's Own Country by Ross Raisin, 2008. I first read this book many years ago and I immediately loved the slightly cynical tone of the protagonist. He's calling out the middle-class yuppies who gentrify the Dales and contrasts it with the harsh realities of actually being a Dales farmer. In the book, the protagonist, who doesn't fit into conventional society and is a bit of a loner, develops an obsession with his new neighbour. I won't spoil it for you, but you can kind of tell where it's going. I enjoyed the story, it has a dark and insidious undertone, but I felt the ending was slightly anticlimactic. I also felt that the protagonist falls into a trope, the lonely, slightly weird teenage boy who's hiding a disturbed side. Regardless, it's still a pretty enjoyable book and it's quite a hidden gem, so you should check it out. The Good Companions by J.B. Priestley, 1929. As a University of Bradford graduate who spent most of my time in the J.B. Priestley library, I kind of am duty-bound to include him at some point. The Good Companions is set in the fictional town of Brontës, an obvious stand-in for Bradford, and is about a motley crew of very different people who create a travelling music troupe in the glory days of British music halls. The reason why it really appealed to me is because it feels like the book version of an L.S. Lowry painting. Priestley really brings to life what West Yorkshire industrial towns are like, and it's done in such an articulate and beautifully written way. There's also a real sense of Yorkshire humour throughout, so it feels like you're reading a series of inside jokes between you and Priestley. Now, I've got to be honest, a lot of the plot isn't in Yorkshire, and so you're probably thinking, hang on, you've just broken your own rules here, you hypocrite. And, okay, kinda, but I justify its inclusion because the bits which are in Yorkshire are just so good that they make up for it. It's like Anthony Hopkins was only in Silence of the Lambs for about 16 minutes, yet he won an Oscar. And regardless, it's kind of a forgotten novel, so it's worth me breaking the rules a little bit just to make you aware of it. The Gallows Pole by Benjamin Myers, 2016. Okay, this is a controversial one. This is the one that I'm going to get a lot of hate for, so I've eased you into it. The Gallows Pole is a fictionalised account of the Cragvale coiners, who I've already done a video on, and it received critical acclaim when it was released, so I came into it with a lot of high expectations. It's also being turned into a TV show. However, it's just style over substance. Myers utilises a creative prose style which has occasional moments of poetry but can often feel clunky and verbose. He tries to use an 18th century Calderdale dialect, but it often feels forced and inauthentic, largely because he's not from the place he's writing about. The coiners were a gang of ruthless, violent criminals, no different to the Cray twins, and though Myers does not shy away from this reality, he frustratingly cannot help but tap into the problematic mythologization of them as common folk, anti-establishment heroes. Looking at you, the band Chumbawamba, who made a video about them. So no, I didn't enjoy this one. I didn't even finish it, because I'm not going to spend my life reading books I don't enjoy. A Woman of Substance, Barbara Taylor Bradford, 1979. When this book came out, it sold 30 million copies, and Barbara Taylor Bradford was awarded an OBE. It tells a story of Emma Hart, a lowly but determined domestic servant in Yorkshire who, through cunning, hard work and ruthless ambition, rises to the very top. It clearly taps into that late 70s power woman feminist thing, so it's a product of its era. And Emma is written as a template character which the mostly female audience can project themselves onto. The book is part of a genre called women's fiction, which might sound a little bit patronising, but all it means is that books written by and for women, usually, they kind of have the same plots and themes and address the same issues, and are a bit like the book version of a soap or melodramatic Hallmark film. With that in mind, if you go in expecting a story which is enjoyable but also slightly pulpy, you won't be disappointed. It's by all means a modern epic. I mean, look at the size of the thing. The main reason I liked this book is because I can relate somewhat to Emma, because I also am driven by ruthless ambition and a need for vengeance on my enemies. Anyway, the main issue I have with the book is that Emma is written as a Mary Sue character, where, of course, everything she does is perfect and amazing and brilliant, and she's skilled and this, that and the other. She feels too good. She doesn't have any realistic character flaws, and though she does suffer a lot in the novel, this characterization of her can become grating. I also think that a lot of the way characters describe contemporary events is a little bit ham-fisted and clunky, but as I said, it's not trying to be War and Peace, it's just trying to be an enjoyable and often well-written story, so I enjoyed it. You might as well. Oh, and if you're familiar with Leeds, it's got some great descriptions of Edwardian Leeds. South Riding by Winifred Holtby, 1936. The internal politics and conniving of local councils and schools might not seem a particularly thrilling premise, but you'd be wrong. Winifred Holtby, who was actually born in Bridlington, manages to turn these rather mundane aspects of life into a well-written and moving novel. Set in the South Riding, which is fictional and based on the East Riding of Yorkshire, Holtby ruthlessly examines the social conditions of the time through a series of pericopes, or vignettes of life for both the lower and upper classes. This is weaved in between domestic and personal issues. The only issue I had was that with there being so many characters and so many short scenes with them, it's easy to lose track of who they are or distinguish between them, and so it'll probably take me another read for me to fully understand all the different characters. But regardless of that, I still enjoyed it on my first read, and you probably might too. A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr, 1980. You might have noticed that this book has the exact same cover image as South Riding, and I've noticed it on other books too. Which is just laziness, publishers. Come on, get it together, find some different pictures. Anyway, it's very unusual to find a novel which feels genuinely unique, but this one does. It feels genuinely original. It's only a short read, it should only take you a few hours or so, but It's really interesting and I really enjoyed it, okay? It's about a World War One veteran who's tasked with uncovering a wall painting in a Yorkshire church, and that might not sound particularly exciting, but it is, because JLK manages to examine both the protagonist's own personal scars, mental and physical, from the war, as well as this wistful longing for a time long ago. It's a real hidden gem, so I definitely recommend checking it out. And finally, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, 1911. You may be thinking, this is a children's book? I'm an adult, why would I want to read a children's book? But I'm of the firm belief that a good children's book can be enjoyed by an adult as well, and this is certainly no exception. It's a real delight to read, with this really wholesome family message about renewal, rebirth and personal development, and despite being written for children, it often addresses some really important themes like loneliness, abandonment, and things like that in a way which feels quite moving at times. So it's something that you can definitely enjoy as a family, and as I said in my review of the film, Misselthwaite Manor is the most Yorkshire sounding place ever. If you are going to read it with children, bear in mind that as a book written in 1911, it does contain some of the views of its time. And so, although there is nothing that I would say is inappropriate, it might be worth explaining some of the language used about colonial India to them beforehand, as it can be a bit jarring to modern readers. So there you have 7 of the novels I've reviewed. Obviously stay tuned for part 2 whenever I get around to reading them, but I do really hope that at least one of the books has sounded appealing to you, so go on, get out there, get reading. And don't be telling me, oh, why haven't you read this? Because it's coming in part 2 and you can look in the description to see what I'll be reading next.